Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. I was so excited to start my new babysitting job for the Smith family. Extra money and getting to play with cute kids. It seemed perfect for a high schooler like me, but I was about to realize looks can be deceiving. My first night on the job, the parents showed me around the house, gave instructions on bedtimes and meals, and introduced me to their 5-year-old son, Brian. He seemed like a typical shy kid at first, but soon warmed up to me as we played with his toys while his parents got ready to go to their dinner party. After they left, Brian and I had a fun evening eating pizza and watching a movie. Everything was going smoothly. When it got late, I took him upstairs to brush his teeth and get into pajamas. But as we walked up the stairs, I noticed his demeanor abruptly shift. The playful sparkle in his eyes darkened to something more sinister. His voice grew deeper, perfectly pronouncing words instead of with a childish lilt. He stared right through me coldly instead of looking away bashfully like before. I figured maybe he was just getting tired and cranky. Kids' moods could change quickly. But over the next hour, his behavior became more and more unsettling. While reading a bedtime story, he seemed to know it by heart already, silently mouthing the words along with me. He made intense, unblinking eye contact that sent a chill down my spine. I laughed it off, blaming my overactive imagination. After tucking him in and turning out the light, I went back downstairs, shaken. Immediately, I heard soft creaking footsteps upstairs, too heavy and purposeful for a small child, pacing back and forth across the ceiling. My pulse spiked. I called Brian's name but got no response. The creaking continued slowly, methodically. I forced myself to go back up and check on him. He appeared sound asleep in bed, blankets rising and falling with steady breath. I must be hearing things, I told myself. I should just let the kid rest. But over the next few hours, I kept hearing noises from upstairs. Furniture scraping, floorboards groaning, doorknobs loudly rattling. Each time I checked, Ryan was tucked in bed, not making a peep. Around midnight, I swore I heard a child softly singing from somewhere upstairs. The hairs on my neck stood straight up. Brian's door was still closed, his room dark and quiet. A new kind of terror seized me. Was there someone else up there? I wanted to flee the house but couldn't leave Brian alone. So I stayed frozen on the living room couch, listening to the increasingly creepy nighttime symphony, praying his parents would get home soon. At last, I heard the front door open. As the Smiths walked in, the noises upstairs stopped abruptly mid-creak. I almost wondered if I had imagined it all. Too freaked out to think straight, I stammered that Brian had a fever and I should probably go. The parents looked puzzled but thanked me, and I rushed out, still shaking. Somehow I agreed to come back the next Saturday. I told myself I had overreacted before, but this time the atmosphere felt even eerier when I arrived, like the calm before a gathering storm. The evening started normally at first again. We played in Brian's room until bedtime, but once we were alone upstairs, that same sinister change came over him. Right on cue after I put him to bed, the heavy pacing started up in the ceiling again. But this night, the doorknobs rattled more violently. Dark shadows passed under the door, nails scratched inside the walls. I buried my head under a blanket on the couch, wishing it away like a bad dream. Then I heard a strange child's giggle from upstairs. Definitely not Brian's usual laugh. Something inhuman. When the parents got home, the noises once again stopped immediately. I rushed out quicker than ever, chilled by Brian's empty gaze as I left. I couldn't shake the feeling he was cunningly putting on an act for his mom and dad. Against all reason, I came back again the next weekend. I had to know what was going on in that house at night. If I could capture any strange sounds on my phone, I could prove I wasn't crazy. This time, when the noises started up, I turned on every light and frantically checked everywhere. Closets, attic, laundry, basement. All empty. But the bizarre sounds continued, moving through the house, taunting me. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep. As soon as the sun rose, I planned to have a serious talk with the Smiths. I couldn't babysit Brian again until they investigated this. Waiting for dawn in the den, I heard a loud crash upstairs, followed by a dreadful wailing cry. Heart racing, I sprinted up to Brian's room where I had left him sleeping soundly all night. His bed was empty, blankets tossed on the floor. I desperately searched everywhere, calling his name. Then I noticed his pajamas strewn wildly across the room, his window gaping open. Rushing to the window, I glimpsed a small figure running into the shadowy trees behind the house. I screamed Brian's name, but he was already disappearing into the dark woods. Gone. The Smiths never found him. Once I told the police everything, I was ruled out as a suspect. But I still replay those nights over and over, wondering if I could have prevented it all. What evil had I unwittingly unleashed by babysitting Brian? I'll never stop wondering or blaming myself. I didn't think much of it when the parents introduced me to their 5-year-old daughter Emma and her favorite doll Lucy. Most little girls have a special toy they take everywhere. But Emma's attachment to Lucy seemed unhealthy even from the start. I was about to find out just how disturbingly close they were. Emma clung to that doll everywhere she went. At dinner, playtime, bath time. She even slept curled up with it at night. Whenever I asked her a question, she would lean in and listen to Lucy before answering me. The parents said Emma had been through a lot lately with their stressful divorce, so the doll brought her great comfort. But I felt they were making excuses for behavior bordering on obsessive and bizarre. My first night babysitting, I gently suggested Emma leave Lucy in her room while we played games and watched a movie together. Tears immediately welled up in her eyes, but she reluctantly agreed after I promised they would be reunited at bedtime. Without the constant presence of the doll, Emma came out of her shell a bit and was giggling and chatty. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe she could develop some healthy independence from her troubling attachment to Lucy. But as soon as we went upstairs to get ready for bed, Emma sprinted into her room and snatched up Lucy, cradling the doll close to her chest. That vacant, faraway look returned to her eyes, as if a switch had been flipped. As I tucked them both in, Emma stared right through me, utterly fixated on Lucy. When I asked if she wanted me to read them a story, she didn't respond at all. She just kept petting the doll's yarn hair. I went back downstairs, deeply unsettled by her behavior. Then shortly after, through the baby monitor, I heard Emma talking upstairs. Assuming she was reading to her doll, I listened closer. But the hushed voice whispering back wasn't Emma's. My blood ran cold. It sounded like an adult woman mumbling indistinctly in response to Emma from inside the room. But the parents were out for the night, and I was the only adult there. What on earth was happening? Terrified, but not wanting to startle or upset Emma, I slowly opened her bedroom door again. She was sitting up in bed, smiling and whispering secrets into Lucy's ear tucked under her arm. The disembodied replying voice had gone silent. I cautiously asked who she had been talking to. Lucy. Emma said, as if it were totally obvious. Maybe she just had an overactive imagination. I tried to reassure myself. I left them alone again, though was now truly disturbed. Over the next few hours, I kept overhearing one-sided conversations through the monitor. Emma giggling, whispering, listening intently. But no matter how many times I checked, she was always alone in her room, except for Lucy. Around midnight, Emma suddenly started sobbing. I rushed to her and found her curled in a ball, with Lucy lying next to her. Emma looked at me pleadingly. Lucy is mad. She wants me to play a game, but I don't want to. My heart dropped. When I frantically asked what kind of game Lucy wanted her to play, Emma just shook her head, eyes brimming with fear and confusion. With trembling hands, I picked up the doll. Its lifeless glassy eyes seemed to stare back at me ominously. I suggested we lock Lucy away for the night so she couldn't scare or be mean to Emma anymore. Just holding the creepy thing made my skin crawl, like icy tentacles were gripping my hands from inside the doll's body. But Emma refused to put Lucy away, saying it would make her even more angry. She begged me not to leave them alone again. I reluctantly agreed, moving a chair into her room to stand watch over them for the rest of the night. Neither of us slept a wink. The doll remained eerily motionless and silent, but a sinister presence still seemed to loom over us. As the sun finally came up, Emma sighed heavily with relief. This was not normal or healthy. When her parents got home, I had a very serious talk with them about limiting contact between Emma and Lucy. She was becoming far too attached, to the point it was deeply troubling. The mother seemed reluctantly understanding, but the father became angry and defensive. He accused me of trying to take Lucy away from his daughter. He then grabbed the doll and stormed out, leaving Emma crying forlornly. I never babysat for them again after that night. But shortly after, I heard Emma's erratic, distressed behavior was growing even worse. She became uncommunicative and prone to violent tantrums, lashing out viciously at school. Late one night, Emma vanished from her bedroom. After a panicked search, her parents finally found her wandering alone in the woods, manically digging a small grave with her bare hands. And lying next to the fresh pole in the dirt was Lucy. The doll was gone, but its ghost continued haunting that fragile child. Getting Emma professional help was the only option left. I prayed she would find some way to heal from the scars Lucy left on her psyche. As for me, all I could do was learn from my mistakes and try to move on. But the chill of that doll's stare would linger with me always. I really should have listened when the Jones family hesitantly explained why they were willing to pay premium rates for a sitter. But I was nay and cash-strapped at the time, so I arrogantly thought I could handle any difficult child. I was dead wrong. Their son Charlie was far more sinister than I ever could have imagined. From the moment I arrived, Mr. and Mrs. Jones seemed anxious and on edge despite my references and experience. They apologized in advance for Charlie's troubling behavior issues that had repeatedly driven off previous sitters. I confidently assured them I was up for any challenge. How hard could one 8-year-old really be? My confidence wavered slightly when I first saw the way Charlie eyed me up and down with a cold, assessing gaze. Most children were shy of being a new sitter for the first time, but Charlie just kept staring at me with an unnerving, penetrating intensity. Still, I maintained my breezy, cheerful disposition. After his parents left, Charlie remained silently watching my every move. I tried joking around with him and suggesting games we could play together, but he just kept studying me with that same detached curiosity, like I was some alien species he was trying to analyze and understand. Suppressing a shiver at his clinical gaze, I busied myself with tidying up the house, ignoring Charlie's constant staring. I remembered the Jones saying he had some trouble socializing appropriately. I just had to be extra patient and gently draw him out of his shell. But as the hours passed, Charlie remained completely nonverbal and emotionally distant from me. He showed no interest in any of the games or activities I cheerfully suggested we do. Instead, he just silently prowled from room to room, running his fingers along the walls and furnishings as if meticulously analyzing them. When I announced it was time to start getting ready for bed, Charlie's silent shadowing took on a more ominous feeling. He watched my entire bedtime routine with great scrutiny. How I brushed my teeth, washed my face, changed into pajamas. I started feeling exposed, like prey being stealthily circled by a predator. Leaving Charlie alone in his bedroom, I tried to make myself comfortable on the living room couch so I could listen closely for any mischief or disturbances in the night. But an uneasy, skin-crawling sensation of being watched and studied persisted no matter where I was. I chalked it up to letting the Jones' vague warnings put me on edge. After a good night's sleep, I was sure I'd feel much less rattled by my overactive imagination. Exhausted, I eventually dozed off, curled up tightly on the couch. But sometime later, I awoke with a start to the sensation of a small hand gently caressing my face in the dark. My blood turned to ice in my veins. Jolting up in sheer primal terror, I fumbled for the lamp switch. In the flood of light, I saw Charlie standing motionless right next to me, his empty, midnight black eyes boring deep into mine. Without a word, he silently wandered back to his bedroom, leaving me shaken to my core. I didn't dare sleep another wink that night. In the morning light, Charlie continued to study me with clinical precision, tilting his head curiously at my obvious exhaustion and frayed nerves. Meanwhile, I planned to firmly inform his parents that I would not sit for them again. Their son was far too disturbing and sinister for my comfort level. But curiously, the moment his parents returned, Charlie transformed instantly into a perfectly sweet, talkative, entirely normal-seeming little boy. He excitedly told them false stories about all the fun bonding time we supposedly shared, none of which remotely described the actual reality of the night before. I was far too disturbed to correct his manipulative lies. I vehemently turned down any future babysitting jobs for their family after that night, making vague excuses about being too busy with schoolwork. The truth was that being alone with Charlie again would have completely broken me mentally and emotionally. There was clearly something very wrong with him on a core human level I could not begin to reckon with. A few weeks later, I heard through neighborhood gossip that the Jones family had abruptly moved away in the night. Apparently, Charlie had been harming their pets, and then blaming the injuries and deaths sadistically on other children. His increasingly disturbed parents were supposedly taking him to a psychiatric hospital out of state. I remained deeply haunted by my brief time spent in the company of that soulless, empty-eyed child. He seemed to entirely lack empathy, conscience, or any other recognizable human emotion behind those dead, shark-like eyes. I shudder to imagine what kind of monster that mercurial sociopath might become as an adult, set loose to prey upon society. Maybe if I had listened to the parents' hesitant warnings from the very start, I could have protected myself better, both physically and mentally, while under their roof. But my prideful arrogance had led me directly into the path of a predator, forcing me to endure Charlie's sinister manipulations and games. I was fortunate to escape relatively unscathed. Still, the experience left me with psychological scars I struggle to articulate even now. There are some forms of darkness and danger in this world that simply cannot be rationalized or forgotten no matter how hard you try. Those few hours in Charlie's disturbing presence marked me forever, leaving a primal warning etched into my soul to always be more wary of the evil that can lurk behind even the most innocent of facades. I survived, but the shadowy specter of him still lingers in the periphery of my mind after all this time, closing in whenever I start to doubt my own perception of reality. All I can do is trust my instincts now and avoid anyone or anything that makes me feel seen and exposed in that way ever again. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.